Masechet Sanhedrin, Daf Yod. We're going to see a series of rulings by Rava about testimony and hazama. On the previous daf, Rava said that if a person is involved consensually in mishkav zachur, and then he testifies against his partner that he was with, together with a third person who was just standing by and is not related to any of them, then we take that testimony and we split it in half. For himself, we do not accept it because a person cannot testify about himself. Nobody would declare that they themselves are wicked. And therefore, that person who was involved in the sin, but he's testifying about himself, he would not get punished based on his own testimony. However, we do accept his testimony with regard to his partner in crime. Because he's not related to that person, and therefore that partner, together with the third party witness, joined together as two witnesses, and that partner would get punishment. That's what Rava said on the previous daf. Now another law. Amar Rava, Piloni ba al ishti, hu ve'ached mistarfin lehorgo, aval lo lehorga. Someone comes to court and he testifies that my wife committed adultery with that man, a certain man, an adulterer. So what happens? He and another will join together. So you have the husband and some other person who happened to be there and witnessed the sin. So he and that other person can join together as valid witnesses to kill the man, the adulterer, however, not to kill her, the adulteress. Why? Because she is related to the husband. So the husband is his testimony with respect to his wife is invalid. Can't testify against a relative. But with respect to the adulterer, he's not related to them, to that person. Now, it's a paradox again, because obviously if he sinned, then he sinned with someone and it's with his wife. So, and if she sinned also willingly, then she deserves punishment as well. But that's the technicality of witness testimony, that the witness is not, it's invalid. It's not that he's not believed, but we cannot apply it to the wife because she's related, but we can apply it to the adulterer. We ask, why is Rava teaching us in the second teaching here that we didn't already know from the first case? Is he teaching us that we divide the statement and we apply it to one person but not to another person? We already know that from the previous case of the homosexual relations. Adam karov esel asmo amrinan, esel ishto lo amrinan, kamash malan. Oh, we need the second case because I might have thought that yes, a person is considered a relative regarding himself. A person will not make himself a wicked person, and therefore we throw out testimony, we say invalid testimony. If he says, I was the one that sinned, then we don't accept it. But I might have thought that a person with relations to his wife, we don't say that this is that a person is related to his wife. We might say that a person wouldn't make himself a rasha, but maybe he would say that his wife is a rasha. Especially, look, she committed adultery, so I guess their relationship is not that strong. So we might have thought that maybe we would accept his testimony even with regard to his wife, and that's why Rava tells us the second law, not so. Just like a person is related to himself, he is related to his wife and cannot testify against her. Rava Peloni ba al na'ara ha'me'orasa ve'huzmu neheragin ve'en meshalemin mamon. Rava says another law. If someone comes and testifies, this man, he sinned with a young woman who was engaged, who had kiddushin. So that means she's between 12 and 12 and a half. That's the na'ara part. And Me'orasa, she had kiddushin with another man, and this guy came and slept with her. Well, then he committed adultery. Now, someone said that. Two witnesses said that. Now, those first two witnesses that made this claim against this guy that he was an adulterer with a nara Me'orasa, they end up being proven to be false witnesses. A second set of witnesses come and say, you could not have seen this guy with the nara on the date and time that you saw them, because you were with us in the baseball game in Chicago. So those first set of witnesses are edim zomemin. So what happens to them? They get capital punishment. Why? Well, they tried to make the guy to make this guy get capital punishment. Now notice they said Piloni, the certain person, he sinned with a nara morasa. They did not name the young woman. They didn't name who she is. So nothing would happen. No, there'll be no consequences to any young woman because they didn't name her. They only named one of the parties, and so that was the man. And if they were believed, he would be killed. And since he would have been killed, and that's what they tried to do, once they are found to be edim zomemin, they are killed. However, those false witnesses, the first set, don't have to pay, because they didn't even potentially cause anybody to lose any money. That's as opposed to bito shel ploni. If two witnesses come and say, we saw this man have relations with the daughter of that person who was a na'ara me'orasa. Now they name both parties, huzmu neheragin, and they are found to be edim zomemin. Then the first set of witnesses are killed because they if their testimony was believed, then the man, the adulterer, definitely would have been killed. She, if it was consensual, they would have. If not. But for sure, he would have been killed. Umeshalamin mamon lazeh unfashot lazeh, and they also have to pay money. Money to whom? Well, if they were believed, then the father of the bride would not get the full amount of the ketubah. That's why we're talking about ne'ara me'orasa. Once a woman is an adult, then she gets the payment of a ketubah should the marriage end. But ne'ara me'orasa, the father gets the 200 zuz, and if it's found, and if it's believed that that this Na'ara Me'orasa was in fact with another man, and if she was willing, she would get capital punishment. But in addition, she would lose out the full payment of the ketubah, meaning her father would lose out the payment of the ketubah, and therefore the edim zomemin get two punishments, because they were going to make the man and maybe the woman also get capital punishment. That's one direction. But they were also going to make the father of the wife lose out money. And so because what they tried to do affected different people, they have to get both punishments. And we do not apply kim le bedrabamine, that if it's two punishments, you only get the worst one. That only applies if the two punishments are because of the same plaintiff. But here, they were causing a harm to two different people. ואמר רבא, פלוני רבא השור והוזמו נהרגין ואין משלמין ממון. If two witnesses come and say, we saw a certain person sinned with an ox, but they don't say whose ox it belonged to. Somebody's ox somewhere out there, but this person sinned. Well, if they are believed, then that person would get capital punishment. But it turns out that first set of witnesses become edim zomemin. The second set come and say they could not have seen such a sin on the day and place that they said, because they were not there. So what happens to the edim zomemin? That first set of witnesses, they get capital punishment because they tried to give capital punishment to this person who allegedly had relations with an ox. But they don't pay any money because they didn't name whose ox it belongs to. The law is that if anybody sins with an ox, doesn't matter if consensual or not. You don't ask it any questions. The point is, no matter what, if someone sins with an ox, the ox is killed. Okay, but we don't know whose ox it what ox he sinned with. We didn't name the owner of the ox, and therefore there would be no loss. Even if we accepted their testimony, there'd be no monetary loss, so they don't have to pay anything. They only get capital punishment. However, if two witnesses come and say, we saw this man sin with the ox of Mr. Friedman's ox, and this guy, he sinned with that guy's ox. ox. In that case, if we believe them, they would have killed the sinner himself, and they would have caused a loss to Mr. Friedman because they would have killed Mr. Friedman's ox. So once they are found to be edim zomemin, they actually get two punishments. They have to pay money to Mr. Friedman because they were going to kill his ox. They would have caused him a loss. So they have to pay. And they also get the capital punishment because they were, if we believe them, would have given capital punishment to the sinner. And because they were going to cause something wrong to happen to two different parties, therefore they get both punishments, and we don't say kimle b'derabamine, only give the worst punishment, because in fact they're punished because of two different claims against them because they're from two different people. Ha'tu lamali hainuhach. Now we ask, why do you need this case regarding the animal and also the case regarding the adam orasa? It's the same principle, that if edim zoamin are going to cause a loss to two different parties, then they get both punishments. Mishum deka ba'e ba'aya ilaveh, teba'e rava, peloni rava shori mahu. Oh, you're right. The second case about the animal actually doesn't teach us anything new that we didn't already know from Na'adam Orasa. Again, it's another case where your payment is to one person, capital punishment is because they tried to kill another person. But the reason why Rava brought up the animal case was because he wanted to follow up with a more interesting question that he didn't yet know. Here's the question. If someone comes and says, this person had relations with my ox, then what do we say about that? Mi amrina dadam karov etzel atzmo, ven adam karov etzel mamono, or dilma amrina dadam karov etzel mamono. Do we say that a person is related to himself? If someone says, I sinned, then that testimony is invalid, because a person will not make himself into a wicked person, as we said above. So everybody agrees with that. But a person, would we say, is not considered a relative regarding his money, right? Would a person say, my ox sinned? Well, maybe. He's not. The ox is not related to him, and so he may very well say, this ox was involved in a wicked act, and we should accept his testimony. Or maybe not. Maybe the other way. Maybe we say that a person is considered related, not only regarding his own body, his own life, but also regarding his money. Right? Person, let's say he's nogeya badavar. He stands to lose something, so we don't accept his testimony, not for his loss and not for his benefit. And even though he himself is admitting that this is my ox, that some guy sinned with it, that we would not believe him with regard to the ox. That's the question. After Rava asked the question, he looked into it and he found an answer. And he said that a person is considered relative regarding himself. So even if someone comes into court and says, I sinned, and whatever it is, we're not going to give him a punishment based on his own testimony. Only if two other witnesses come and say so. But a person is not considered a relative regarding his property. So if someone says, this is my ox, was involved in a crime, then the ox is killed because a person, he's not going to make himself a rasha, but if he says, my ox did something wrong, that doesn't necessarily reflect on him, and so therefore that testimony is valid. And so if someone comes and says, that person sinned with my ox, then we give capital punishment to the person, and we also kill the ox. We now move on to the next part of the Mishnah that said makot bishlosha. In order to adjudicate a case that would have lashes as a punishment, you need 3 judges, according to Chachamim. Mina hanemile. What's the source? Amar Rav Huna Amar Kera Ushfatum Shenayim Ve'en Betin Shakul Mosifin Alem Od Echad Harekan Shelosha. The Pesukim that are the source for the punishment of lashes is here. It says Ki Riben Anashim is a fight between 2 people, and they come to justice, and ushfatum, this is in plural, and they will judge them. So they, is in plural, means at least 2 judges. We're going to see the rest of this pasuk, so we'll read it now. The judges will decide, they will justify the righteous, and they will condemn the wicked. And then if it's a case that the one who is guilty, the one that was wicked, deserves to be given lashes, then then the judge will make him lie down and beat him in his presence according to his fault by a certain number. How many? 40 and not more. If you go but more than 40, then thy brother shall be made vile before thee. Nikla, like kal, opposite of kabed. Kabed is to make heavy. That means to treat with honor, with respect. Nikla, similar to kilala. And so too many would be a dishonor. Yes, he deserves punishment, but not overly much. And we'll talk about that, the number also. It's never going to get to actual 40. Okay. Since the pasuk says ushvatum in plural, that means at least 2 judges. Now you can't have an even number of judges, so therefore you're going to have to add 1 more, and then you get 3. Now we ask, Ela me'ata istiku shenayim hirshiu shenayim hare kan shib'ah. There's more verbs in that same pasuk, and so maybe you should take each of them to add 2 more judges. Istiku, that they will say that he is innocent. Hirshiu, that's 2 more judges who will decide that he is guilty. So now if you count all of the verbs, and each one is plural, 3 verbs, each one plural, that's 6. And you can't have an even number, so it's going to have to add 1 more to make it odd. Then you're going to have 7. So really, if you're just looking at the verbs, it should be 7. And the answer is, oh, actually, the words of Itzduku and Hirshiu, we need that to teach us what Ula taught. Ula asked, where do we find a hint in the Torah for the law of Edim Zomin? Before we answer the question, we interrupt and we ask a question on that question. What do you mean you want a hint from the Torah that there's a law of conspiring witnesses? It's explicit in a different place in Devarim, earlier, chapter 19. And it says, right, kasher zamam, you do to them that which they tried to do. We have a whole paragraph in the Torah about it. Rather, what we're asking is, I know there's a law of edim zomin, and that would mean that, whatever, if they tried to make someone pay $100, then they're going to have to pay $100. That we know. But how do you know that that would apply to lashes also? If they said that someone ate pig and therefore it deserves lashes, and it turns out that they were liars, they weren't even there, then they also get lashes. How do you know that lashes also applies to the law of edim zomin? From these words, Histiku tasadik ve'ershiu tarasha. We have to explain how these words mean that. So we ask, Mishum de'estiku et hasadik v'reshu et harasha v'yayim bin akot harasha. Wait a second, what's the connection between these 2 phrases? Just because someone is declared to be innocent, does that mean necessarily that the other person is guilty and deserves makot? Because the next part is ve'ya, if he deserves lashes, the rasha. But that's not necessarily consequent upon someone else being a tzaddik. You see, if it's just a monetary law, then you ask, okay, do you deserve to pay or not pay? Then, if someone is innocent, the other person is guilty. Meaning, if this person is owed money, and then that person has to pay the money. So the verdict about one person is necessarily going to affect the other person because there's 2 parties, and one owes the other money, or one claims money from the other. But regarding lashes, the lashes is individual. Did you do this, whatever sin it is, that requires lashes? So someone else, he doesn't deserve lashes. Good for him. Why does that mean necessarily that some other person does deserve lashes? What's the connection between these 2 parts of the pasuk? Rather, we're reading it like this. If witnesses came and they testified falsely against someone, and they said that this person who's actually a tzaddik is innocent, they made a false claim and said he's a rasha. Really, he didn't eat pig, but they went and said, yeah, we saw him eat pig. Then that's where the our pasuk kicks in. If a second set of witnesses come and say, the first 2 set of witnesses, they weren't even there. They were somewhere else and could never have seen that. And by nullifying that first set of witnesses, they redo the defendant. And now we thought he was a rasha, but now it turns out he was a tzaddik. So we will revive him. And histiku et tzaddik, they will now declare that the tzaddik is in fact the tzaddik. We thought he was a rasha based on the first set of witnesses. So we bring him back to what he was. And actually, those witnesses themselves those were Rasha'im. That's the rest of the pasuk. V'rishiu et harasha. And now we know that those witnesses are Rasha'im. And so if the punishment that they tried to give to the defendant was lashes, now they will get lashes. And that's how we know that Edim Zomimim, not only do they have to pay if they cause someone to try to cause someone to payment, but they also will get lashes if that's what they tried to do. Now, so that's why we need the pasukim. V'yisriku et sadik, v'rishu et harasha, is on account of all that whole derivation from ula, and that's why we don't count them separately as words that would mean that you have to have two more judges to make 7, but rather only 2 judges, and then that makes 3. Hold on, why can't we learn that you would give lashes to false witnesses from the pasuk of don't testify falsely? That's alav. Generally, if someone is oved alav, something that you can't do, a less serious one, not like Shabbat or other things that require capital punishment, but a lesser lav, a standard lav, requires gets lashes. So we should know that false witnesses would get lashes. I know it from this pasuk. Why do I need ula's derivation? And the answer is mishum dahavale lav she'en bo ma'aseh v'chol lav she'en bo ma'aseh en lokin alav, because that would be negative prohibition that has no action, right? Just speaking falsely. False testimony is not an action, and there's a general rule that any violation of a negative prohibition that does not have an action, there is no flogging for it. So if one eats pig, that's an action that one did, then you get flogged. But just for talking, that's not considered an action, and that's why we need the derivation of ula. Now we go on, and we should be Ishmael amru be'asrim ushlosha. Rabbi Ishmael says that in order to adjudicate lashes, one needs 23 judges. My tamad Rabbi Ishmael. What's his source? Amar Abaye atya rasha mechayabe mitot. Ketiv hacha v'haya im bin harakot harasha. Uchtiv atam asher hu rasha lamut. Madalan be'asim ushlosha. Afkan be'asrim ushlosha. It says it's a gezer hashava. Says the word rasha in both contexts, lashes here, and also regarding those who require the death penalty. As it says in this pasuk that we just read, if it's someone that if the rasha deserves lashes, and it says elsewhere if someone is an evil person and deserves death. So just like over there, if he gets capital punishment, he needs 23 judges. So to here, for lashes, you need 23 judges. That's Abaye. Rava Amar Malkut b'mkom mita omedet. This is something very interesting. He has a conceptual, not a verbal analogy that's in the pasuk as Abaye said, but Rava said conceptually, lashes is in place of execution. It's a kind of symbolic execution. The person doesn't die in the end, but they should consider it as if he got a symbolic death penalty. And that's why, since the symbolism is the same and the lashes are instead of really he deserves death penalty, so therefore, just like death penalty has 23, so 2 lashes requires 23 judges. So Ravacha, the son of Rava, asks Rav Asher, if you follow Rava, then why do we have to make an assessment with a doctor? Before you give someone lashes, you ask a doctor, listen, how many lashes can this person take and not die? We don't want to kill him, so the maximum 39. But let's say he's a weaker constitution. Doctor says, he can only handle 12 lashes. Okay, then you only give him 12 because we don't want him to die. So now is the question, why do we have to assess that? Let's give him the full 39, and if he dies, he dies. Anyway, really he's deserving of death. So, okay, so we're going to replace this. Instead of execution, we'll give him lashes. But fine, we'll give him lashes. But so what if he dies? Really, he deserves a death penalty. So why do we have to be so careful not to make sure he doesn't die? Because the pasuk says, don't give him too many lashes, because your brother will be dishonored or be lowered before your eyes. So we will learn from here that kimachit, when you strike him, you have to strike on the back of a live person. If he's dead, then that's not called lashes. Giving lashes to a dead body is not called lashes. It has to be a person who's alive. It has to hurt, and so on. So if you give a person 12 lashes and after that he dies, and then you give more lashes to a dead body, 20, that's not even called lashes. So therefore, you're not fulfilling the pasuk. Ela hadetanya amduhu lekabel esrim ve'en makinoto ela makot hareuyot lishtalesh vecha mahen temane sereh. But what are you going to do with this baraita that says, if we bring him to the doctor, and doctor says he can handle 20 lashes. Now we only give lashes in multiples of 3, because you go around the back, you go right, left, right, down, and so it has to be a multiple of 3. So how much are we going to round it to? Well, if it's 20, we round it down to 18. That's a divisible by 3. We ask a question about that baraita. If, according to you, really we don't mind if he dies. The only problem with him dying is that that's not called lashes anymore. So here's what we should do in this case. Instead of rounding it down to 18, let's round it up to 21. And if he dies on the 21st, if the doctors are indeed right, so what? So he'll die on the 21st. At the time that we struck him, he was still alive. The doctor says he'll be alive after 20. Good, so we did 20. The next one will kill him. So what? So we do one more. He got it, he felt it, he was alive, and then he dies after. So we should be able to round up if we're one away from a number that's divisible by 3. And so he answers no. It has to be that, because the pasuk says that his brother will be dishonored before your eyes. That means that after you finish giving him lashes, he has to be your brother. And if he's dead, you can't call him your brother. And so therefore, we have to make sure that he doesn't die from the lashes. So theoretically, according to Rava, indeed, lashes are a form of capital punishment. But lashes have to be given only to someone who's alive and will stay alive after the last lash that you give. And that's why we have to make an assessment of how much the person can handle. But technically, it's really a form of capital punishment, and that explains why you'd need 23 judges, according to Rabbi Ishmael. The next part of Mishnah says, Ibur hachodesh bishlosha. Intercalation of the month requires 3 judges. Now this word, Ibur, it's the same as the word me'ubar, meaning pregnant. That's talking about an extra fat month. There's 2 options for a month. Technically, the moon goes around the earth every 29 and a half days, but you can't have a 29 and a half day month, so it's either 29 or 30. And so it's going to more or less alternate, although sometimes you'll have 2 in a row. And so the Bet Din has to decide each month, is this going to be a chaser month that has only 29 days? If it's chaser and the month is only 29 days, that means the 30th day, since the previous Rosh Chodesh, is the next Rosh Chodesh. So if the 30th day is Rosh Chodesh, that's called chaser. However, if it's a me'obad, or a month that's maleh, a full month, that means the previous month is 30 days, and that means that the 31st day since the previous Rosh Chodesh will be the next Rosh Chodesh. And so the Mishnah is going to ask about the terminology of Ibur HaChodesh Bishlosha, which sounds like a full month of 30 days. That requires 3 judges. That's if it's maleh. But if it's chaser, then maybe it doesn't. Why is it using this language? So the Gemara asks, Chishub lakatane, Kiddush lakatane, ela Ibur, la likidisha, memela le'aber. It doesn't say the calculation of when the month will be, should be with 3 judges. It doesn't say that the sanctification of the moon, sanctification could be, let's say, on the 30th day, and we say today is sanctified, that means the previous month was 29, it's chaser. But rather, the Mishnah chooses to say Ibur. But why would the Bet Din have to get involved at all if it's a fat month? Let them not do anything. Don't make it kadosh. You're not going to make the 30th day Rosh Chodesh, and then the 31st day automatically will be, because that's the only 2 options. Either it's a 29-day month or a 30-day month, which means either the 30th day is Rosh Chodesh or the 31st day is Rosh Chodesh. If you make the 30th day Rosh Chodesh, you declare it Mikudash, then it's a chaser month. If you don't, then the only other option is going to be tomorrow. So why would Ibur HaChodesh, why would a Maleh month require any judges at all? Amar Abaye, Taneh Kiddush HaChodesh. Abaye says, you know what? You have to change the wording of the Mishnah. We got it wrong. Really, it should say Kiddush HaChodesh, which would mean on the 30th day, the Beit Din would say, today is Rosh Chodesh. And then we would know it's Chaser. But you're right. If they didn't do anything, then it would go to the 31st day, and then automatically the 31st day would be Rosh Chodesh. Tanyana Mehachi Kiddush HaChodesh Ve'ibur HaShana Bishlosha Diber B'mi is a Braita that says precisely this language. Sometimes it's very good to learn from a Braita because it's parallel to the Mishnah, and in this case the Mishnah also continues the same way. The Mishnah said Ibur HaChodesh and Ibur HaShana Bishlosha Diber B'mi. This Braita says Kiddush instead of Ibur. So Abaye is not just making up a textual imitation from nowhere. There is in fact a Braita that says Kiddush HaChodesh. Fine. So if it's a Chaser month, then you need 3 judges. If it's going to be Maleh, then you wouldn't need any judges at all, in fact. And the intercalation of the year. The year, that's talking about adding an extra month, Adar Bet, to make it a 13-month year. And so that actually you do need a Bet Din to come sit down and say, not a regular year of 12 months, but 13 months. And that's all according to the Meir. So that's Abaye. He has proof from a Baraita. Amar Rava, Ibur Katane. Rava says, very nice, you have a Baraita, but that's not our Mishnah. You can't just change what's a significant word. This is not just like, the same meaning. This is a very important terminology. And if our Mishnah says ibur, it means ibur. Don't change the word. Ela amar Rava, kiddush beyom ibur bishlosha. Achad ibur leka kiddush. Rather, Rava says, if you're going to sanctify the new moon on the day of the intercalation, on the day, meaning on the 30th day. That's what it's talking about, Yom Ibur. That 30th day is called Yom Ibur because if it's a fat month, if it's a Maleh month, then that 30th day will be part of the previous month. But if you are Mekadesh, if the Beit Din sanctifies it, then it will be Chaser. So that's what it means, Ibur HaChodesh, sanctifying that 30th day to make the previous one Chaser. It will require 3 judges. However, if they don't sanctify that day, then it goes automatically to the next day. And so after the 30th day, then the Beit Din doesn't have to do anything. They don't have to sanctify the 31st day as Rosh Chodesh because that is automatic. And that's what the Mishnah means when it says Ibur. It means it means in fact sanctifying. It doesn't say Kiddush, but that's what it means. Umaneh, and who is this following? It'll be Elazar ben Sadoki. The Tanya Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok Omer, Im lo nir'a bizmano en mekadishin oto, shekebar kiddushuhu bashamayim. Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok in the Baraita, in fact, says that if the new moon was not seen at its regular time, its anticipated time, meaning on the 30th day, and that the 30th day would be Rosh Chodesh and the previous would be Chaser, then the Beit Din doesn't have to do anything. They don't have to sanctify it because it's already sanctified in heaven, meaning by the natural cycle, if it's not today, it's necessarily going to be tomorrow. So you don't need the intervention of Beit Din. Rav Nachman amar kiddush achar ibor bishlosha b'yom ibor leka kiddush umane pelimo hi. Rav Nachman says actually the opposite of what we just had, and he said that the sanctification of the moon by the Beit Din is actually on the 31st day after the ibor, and that requires 3. And that's how the Beit Din lets everybody know if it's maleh or chaser. If they sanctify the new moon on the 31st day, then you know that month is maleh. If they don't do anything, then automatically it's at the expected. The expected time is when it's chaser, even though it's really half-half, but that's what we call the expected time. And so, in fact, you could read the Mishnah as is. Ibor means when the Beit Din sits down and sanctifies the month after it's fat, on the 31st day, then it requires 3. But on the 30th day itself, actually, they would not sanctify it. And this would follow the opinion of Pelimo. Tetanya, Pelimo omer bizmano en mekadishin oto. Shelo bizmano mekadishin oto. If it's at the expected time, meaning if the Rosh Chodesh is on the 30th, that's the expected time. That's when the Beit Din doesn't have to do anything. It's when it's unexpected and it goes on another day, then the next day you say, oh, wait, everybody, don't think yesterday was Rosh Chodesh, today is Rosh Chodesh, the 31st day. And that's why the Mishnah says, Ibur bishlosha. Rav Ashi amar leolam hishuv katane. Rav Ashi says a different opinion altogether, that the Beit Din never has to do anything. They don't have to be mekadesh, they don't have to sanctify it officially. actually. Rather, we should read the word chishuv, calculation, and they just sit and calculate when it should be, and it just goes by the normal calculation of what nature tells you. You do an astronomical calculation, and then that is when the Rosh Chodesh will be. Umay ibur, chishub del ibur. And so when it says ibur, what does it mean? Ibur, ibur means when it's an intercalated month. No, we mean the calculation of the intercalation. This would be even when witnesses come, the Bet Din also would calculate. That's how they knew if the judges were lying or not, because they knew what to expect and when to expect it. And that's Rabban Gamliel had all the shapes and everything, and so they did know, and the Greek science also knew how to calculate when the next month should be. So actually, it means the calculation. Ibur chodesh. How come it says it in shorthand? Ibur, if it merely means chishuv de ibur, because the next phrase is going to be the ibur, the intercalation of the year. In which case, yes, we need 3 to decide to add another month to the year. So since it says ibur shana, for this over here it says ibur chodesh, even though technically you don't need, the Bet Din will not need to sanctify on any day. They just make the calculation and they announce it, and that's all. Chishub chodesh in, kiddush chodesh la. Maneh Rabbi Eliezer he. So according to this, it's the calculation of the month. That's what we need 3 judges for. You still do need 3 judges to make sure that calculation is correct, but for the official announcement of sanctification, we don't need that. Whose opinion does that follow? It follows the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Tanya Rabbi Eliezer omer, ben bizmano, ben shelo bizmano, en mekadeshin oto. Shenemar v'kidashtem et shenat ha-50 shana. Shanim ateh mekadesh, v'yata mekadesh chodashim. Rabbi Eliezer says, whether it's at the expected time, meaning a chaser month, or not the expected time, meaning it's a maleh month, the Bet Din does not sanctify it, because the pasuk says that you will sanctify the 50th year of the Yovel. We learn from that the Bet Din does have to sanctify a years. That is their job, yes. Years, but not months. Months go automatically. You just have to make the calculation to make sure that it's correct, that everything, all the days will fall out on the holidays will fall out on the correct holidays, and everything will be in order. But all you have to do is make calculation and not sanctification. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer bishlosha vechule. The next part of Mishnah teaches that for the intercalation of the calendar, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel requires that we start with 3 and then debate with 5 and conclude with 7. So let's explain what he means. Tanya, Kesad amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel bishlosha metchilin b'chamisha nosin venotin v'gomrin b'shib'a. So what did Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel mean? How exactly do we do that? That we start with 3 and then we debate with 5, and then we give the verdict with 7. Here's how it works. We start off with 3, just deciding whether they even need to sit down. Is there a need to even have a deliberation? Is there something going on regarding the calendar that they need to discuss? So that's what they vote on. And if 2 of them said, we don't need to even have a discussion, we don't need to adjudicate anything, and one says we do, then that one is minority opinion, and that's it. The process ends there because they don't even agree that we need to go any further. But if 2 out of the 3 judges say that we do need to have a session, and one says we don't, well then the majority wins, and then we bring 2 more in, and they further discuss. Now there's 5 judges. If 2 of the judges say we need to go further and discuss this and vote on something, but 3 said no, we don't need, just leave everything, leave the calendar as it is, we don't need to do anything, then batlu shenayim b'mi'utan, then the 2 are nullified, the 3 win, and the process ends there. Shelosha omrim siricha, shnayim omrim ena siricha, mosifin alahen od shenayim shena minyan pachot mishiv'a. However, if 3 out of the 5 say we do need to meet and do something, and 2 say we don't, then the majority wins, and then you get 2 more for a total of 7, because you cannot make a decision regarding the calendar with less than 7. But you don't need 7 to get to begin with. You just need 3 to begin with, and then 5. The 3 and 5 stages are even deciding whether we need to go any further. But once you decide, yes, we need to go further, and we may need to do something here, then we need 7 in order to actually make a decision. Now this 357, who does it correspond to? Peligi ba'arav Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani v'chad de'imeh umano Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi v'amri la Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi v'chad de'imeh umano Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani. There's going to be 2 opinions, and there's a machloket about who the 2 opinions are. But actually we know who the 2 sages are, but there's 2 versions in how they're introduced. One version says that the machloket is going to be Yitzchak bar Nachmani and someone else who is with him. It sounds like Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani was the main rabbi, and there was someone accompanying him, and that was Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. The other version switches it around. Rabbi Shimon Pazi was the main rabbi, and someone was with him, who was with him, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani. In any case, one of them said one thing, one of them said the other. Chad Amar, Keneged Birkat Kohanim. One said it's the same as Birkat Kohanim. If you look carefully about Birkat Kohanim, the first pasuk, Yibarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, has 3 words. The next pasuk is 5 words. The final pasuk is 7 words, 3, 5, 7. And so that's what corresponds to these judges here, where we start with 3, then we go to 5, then we go to 7. ואחד אמר 3 כנגד שומרי הסף, 5 מרואי פני המלך, 7 רואי פני המלך. The other opinion says this is talking about the dignitaries that attend to the king in the last chapter of Sefer Melachim. It actually is a sad chapter. It's talking about when the Babylonians come and they take away all of the important people. And this pasuk says here that the captain Rav Tabachim of the Babylonians took these people, Seraya, Kohen Arosh, Vet Sefanya, Kohen Mishneh, Vet Sheloshet, Shomrei Hasaf. These the last 3 that we're talking about. These are 3 keepers of the door. These doorkeepers, they weren't just holding the door open, but these were important officials, and there are 3 of them, and so that's the 3. And then the next pasuk says, out of the city, he took an officer who was set over the men of war, and 5 men that were in the king's presence. So that's the 5. They see the king's presence. The point here is that intercalating the calendar is a very important job, and only the top people can do this. In fact, we even say when we do Kiddush Levana, right? We say if only we could greet our Father in heaven once a month. So blessing the new moon is like greeting our Father in heaven. This is an important thing, and so we are comparing the judges that decide the month to these princes here and officials that could see the king of Judea. So we start off with 3 here, and then we go to 5. Now this pasuk in the very last chapter of Sefer Melachim has an almost exact parallel in Sefer Yirmiyah. This whole chapter is almost exactly the same word for word, with a few little differences. And one of the differences are that it says here Shiva anashim mero'eh pnei hamelech, and so here it says 7 people that saw the king's face. So is it referring to the same people with a different number, or different people, whatever it is? The point is it goes from 3 over here to 5 in Melachim to 7 here, and maybe this is yet another level or another group, but the point is it's another number, and so this is parallel to the 3, 5, 7 that we require here regarding intercalating the month. Taneh Rav Yosef, Haneshelosha v'chamisha v'shiva shelosha keneged shomrei hasaf, 5 mero'eh pnei hamelech, 7 ro'eh pnei hamelech. And we also have a braita that from Rav Yosef that teaches that the 3, 5, and 7, the 3 is for the Shomer Asaf, the guards at the door. The 5 are the ones who see the king in Sefer Melachim, and the 7 are the ones who see the king in Yirmiyah. Amar Abaye l'Rav Yosef, Adai dana ma'ita ma'ala parishlan mor hachi. And Abaye told Rav Yosef, after Rav Yosef quoted this baraita, he says, until now, how come you never told us this? This is a new chidush. We never heard this before. Amar lehu la havayadana desrichitu. I didn't know you needed it. Mi ba'itu minai mileta vela amari lechu. Did you ever ask me and they didn't tell you? Right? I wasn't hiding it from you. You just never asked, which shows the importance of students asking a lot of questions to the teacher. Sometimes the teacher assumes the students already know it, and that's why he doesn't. That's why he doesn't say it. So the students have to make sure to ask to draw out all the information that the teacher has up in his head that he may not remember to say, or may assume that the students already know, and that itself is an important lesson. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.